I started my channel now a little over 2 years ago. And if you came to me 2 years ago and told me that you'd be receiving a package, not only just a simple package, but an embargoed Razer device that I was in meetings for, I would have called you a bold-faced liar. But that's the future I find myself in. I was reached out by Razer and they wanted me to try out their all-new Razer Kishi V3, which was incredible. It was the first time a major retailer, major manufacturer has reached out to me for my opinion, for me to do a review. So I took the chance and hopped right onto the opportunity. And honestly, I wasn't really sure what I was getting myself into, primarily because I love gaming on a bunch of different Android handhelds, and I figured I'd give some deeper insight into the controller and how it might function with specifically emulation stuff, how it would work in things like Daijisho and Dolphin and all these other emulation things. But something changed, because alongside the all-new Razer Kishi V3, they're also launching a new and improved version of the Razer Nexus app on both iOS and Android. And one of the marquee features is game streaming, specifically remote play. From any other PC you have the Razer Nexus app installed on. I believe it's also in Cortex. And I've talked about how much I despise remote play because for some unknown reason, it just always kinda sucked where I am. It's not that I have terrible internet, I get regular download speeds of like almost 250 megabits per second and uploads of like 30 megabits per second. So it was never an issue of internet speed, but it was always just kind of weird how game streaming and remote play stuff never really worked quite well for me. But this device, this new controller combined with the Razer Nexus app with its combined remote play functionality actually was the thing I spent the most amount of time doing. The remote play aspect was incredibly intriguing because I was ready to completely lambast it. I thought it was going to be another shoddy attempt, something just to say for marketing. But I'll be honest, this was hands down one of the best PC remote play experiences I've ever had, and this is the same Galaxy S10e that I've done all my Android testing with. I've tried Steam's remote play options, I've tried Microsoft remote play options, but they all have been less than stellar, and Razer somehow had that secret sauce that my computer just really liked, and it ended up running fairly well. There was the occasional hitch, but it was but a momentary lapse in the greater like 3-hour session I would have playing Black Ops 6. And games like that, traditionally on these mobile handheld controller attachment doohickeys, don't usually play particularly great, primarily with my past experiences with a GameSir X3, X2, something like that. And that controller, while fantastic, definitely was cheap, getting it for about $25, and while it had some compelling features that I wish this controller had, like the pivoting Type-C port that would allow it to bend up and down, so it's much easier and nicer to pull your phone in and out of the controller. But something that the Razer Kishi V3 has above quite literally probably all other controller attachments for cellular devices is the full-fat TMR analog sticks, which, if you're not familiar, TMR is the new advancement in analog stick technology. Originally, the be-all and end-all was Hall effect joysticks. Those were fairly prominent in so many other handhelds and controllers, but TMR is set to be the next generation, sort of the next step in controller analog stick functionality. I personally can barely notice a difference. I mean, these do feel like quality analog sticks, and Hall effect joysticks in the past have felt floaty, this minor snapback issues. If they're not high quality, they tended to feel loose in my opinion. There were some controllers where it just didn't feel quite good, and I would have preferred a non-Hall effect joystick if it would have felt better to use. But Luckily, with these ones, these are full-fat, amazing analog sticks with the slip rings around them, so circling around feels honestly amazing, incredibly smooth. I personally like these thumbstick caps on them because the better grip, also not to put wear and tear on the thumbstick's rubber top coating, because in the past I have worn right through that on my old Xbox 360 controllers and my Xbox One controllers and some GameCube controllers, because I don't know, I have particularly corrosive fingers. Moving off of some of the other features, it compares incredibly well to the previous generation. The Razer Kishi V2 was incredibly popular. I had it on iOS devices and it felt fantastic. I would say there is a spot where both of these can coexist. For all the love that I have for how comfortable and amazing the V3 is for playing those first-person shooters and really designed for remote play and game streaming, I would argue for portability's sake, it is not exactly the most easiest thing to transport, especially because it doesn't come with a case. And for $100, I really would have hoped it came with a case. But the V2 serves a very backbone style-esque controller. It was very thin, very flat, and overall was just incredibly portable. It was one of my favorite controllers just to throw into my bag with very little care, because I was able to pick one of those up for like $25 off of eBay. Not sure how much those are going for these days, but who knows? This video is not about the V2 specifically. The V3 as an individual controller supports devices I believe all the way up into like 8 inches in width, which means the maximum tablet this thing supports is like an iPad mini. They do have other versions though that do support full-size iPads, which I'll be honest, is a little extreme. Depending on the model, you also might receive some Apple Arcade time. Depending on which model, you could have averaging between 3 and 6 months, depending on which one you get, which is nice, but I personally never really cared for Apple Arcade, but it's always nice to see that be included. Another feature that they included is using specifically the controller with no phone attached through the Type-C port connected to your computer as a controller for your computer, which honestly is very cool, if not a little bit impractical. I'll be honest though, I kind of wish it worked with the phone in it to be able to watch like YouTube, have a map, or just something on the screen while playing a game on your computer, with your controller being the Razer Kishi V3. There's also 2 rear back reprogrammable buttons on the controller. I personally don't like those particularly much. Not anything to do with this controller specifically, I just never like rear back buttons on any controller. Even Xbox Elite controllers, I do not use the paddles. I find it incredibly distracting when trying to play a game. They do have their own functionality and some people love them, but for me personally, I do not. Overall, I would only say there's 2 major drawbacks with this controller: the price and the Type-C port thing. I know it's a bit of a nitpick, but with how often I would take the phone in and out of this thing, I feel like I am bending the heck out of it. It feels terrible. Like, I might be manhandling it, but like, you shouldn't need to be careful with something like this. It should be able to withstand constant use. I haven't encountered any issues yet with it, but let's hold our breaths on that one. It might end up breaking in the future, who knows. I'll keep you updated down in the comments. And the other issue, like I said, is the price. The base model version of the Razer Kishi V3 is $100, which is a bit of a tough pill to swallow. But when you're playing your dedicated Android games, or if you're turning your old phone into a dedicated emulation handheld, this controller would honestly make a lot of sense to have an overall significantly more improved experience. You're able to switch this controller in and out of X input mode, which depending on the emulator and the front end might be incredibly useful. I would highly recommend this controller if you're looking for a really premium, amazing controller for an old phone to turn it into an amazing gaming handheld. But if you're looking for something for more a casual use case, or something designed to fit the larger screen tablets, I would look somewhere else. I still really like the controller, and I would give it a solid 8 out of 10. I would love to hear what you guys think down below. Don't forget to leave a like, comment, and subscribe. All of the social media coverage down below. And last but not least, have a wonderful day.